Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm so fortunate to be joined today by Dr. Frank Clark, who is a friend of our orchestra, and he also now serves as clinical assistant professor at the University of South Carolina School of Medicine in Greenville, and also medical director and division chief for adult inpatient and consultation-liaison services for the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine at Prisma Health. Frank and we got to know each other several years ago. You were doing, I think, your residency in Colombia at the time, I think, and you were on our board of directors for a while. Then you moved away out of town. I think you went to, was it Blacksburg?
Near Blacksburg, Radford, Virginia, which is about 20 to 30 minutes away from Blacksburg.
And now he's back in Greenville, but he now serves on our advisory council for the orchestra, and we are so fortunate to be able to work together on our new initiative, which is called Tune In, and it has to do with mindfulness, meditation, and music. And we thought this would be such an important initiative, especially during the current COVID-19 crisis, as well as a lot of the turmoil that all of us are facing today around the country, around the issues of social justice, racial justice, and so on. We thought this would be a timely project to take on for our listeners, for our supporters, for ourselves, really. As well. So we're just going to chat a little bit, and I'm just, Frank, if you wouldn't mind sort of starting off by sort of, because I must admit, I'm not as well versed in this arena of mindfulness and meditation. So if we could kind of define it a little bit, and how the music, especially the first piece that we are partnering, which is the Nimrod variation by Elgar, how maybe that particular piece of music might help in that regard.
Absolutely, and Morihiko, I just wanted to thank you for having me on today. It's an honor, and I'm happy to partner with you in the Philharmonic in this initiative. So mindfulness, the way I would describe it is being aware of our feelings. It allows us to go to a different headspace, and during that time, that headspace that we're in, we can basically, what I would say is, to take out the trash, anything that is overwhelming us, whether it be anxiety, stress, the current crisis that we're all affected by, whether it's COVID, pandemic, or as you mentioned, the racial injustices that have plagued our country for hundreds of years. I think about mindfulness as a meditation that allows me to be kind to myself, to show compassion to myself, and for that moment, whether it be 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, I can be at peace. And hopefully, after I have participated in that mindfulness exercise, I can be restored. I can feel rejuvenated, and I can get back to my day that is usually quite busy, as you can imagine. We all have busy lives, and so sometimes we're so consumed in our thoughts and emails, and we're trying to balance as best we can. But I think mindfulness allows us to be better in terms of balancing the priorities, and it allows us to feel whole. So it's something that I implement in my practice with my patients. I serve a diverse patient population, those suffering from depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, substance use disorders, as well as personality disorders. And so sometimes it's easy for us to filter in negative thoughts if we're kind of feeling hopeless and there's despair, which, right now we have clear examples of that in our country. But for me, at least, and I know for others who I've worked with and colleagues, mindfulness for me gives me hope. And again, it gives me a sense of peace that, again, for that moment, I can be kind to myself and practice happiness and patience.
Great. I like to kind of focus a little bit on the whole rejuvenation idea too, because For me, and I'm sure many of my colleagues who are, who are musicians as well, when we listen, for us, it's not a relaxing activity per se, because we are so actively engaged with the sound that we hear, but as a result, though, and throughout this project, there will be sort of a mix of orchestral performances. I mentioned the Elgar, which is the very first piece, but there will be some music by Bach, for instance, and his the music that he wrote for unaccompanied solo string instruments, for instance, and some of those movements just have such a spiritual dimension to it, but also it's so complex. So it's, for us, when we listen to it, we can't really turn our minds off per se, but our minds are so actively engaged. And then what I find is that, at least for me, I feel myself re-energized and with a renewed sense of focus to kind of go through the rest of the day, or whatever we need to do. So I guess that's okay then, right? Like for that still works for the mindfulness and meditation, because maybe there might be people out there who think, well, meditate, it needs to be relaxing and just kind of empty our minds, so to speak. I mean, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be that.
It doesn't. It looks, it's different strokes for different folks. And so I think mindfulness is what you make of it. Everyone responds to things, or will have a reaction to things and may see things differently. And so, I have a love for classical music. If you were to play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony or Moonlight Sonata, you and I may come away with different feelings about that piece, and some of that may be based on our experiences. But at the end of the day, your rejuvenation may be different than mine, but we both feel rejuvenated, and for various reasons. So it's kind of like doing a workout, right? You're not doing the workout to compete with someone else. You're doing the workout for your own mental and physical well-being. And so that's what I think about in terms of mindfulness. It's our moment, our time, no one else's, and people can't tell us how we should feel after hearing something, or well, I felt this way. Well, that's okay. We are entitled to feel the way we feel, and our feelings are valid, and so we have to honor that. And that's a way of honoring our mind, body, and soul, going back to that self-compassion.
Great. And in terms of how we set up the very first release, so to speak, I just love, and you will hear this when you listen to the whole track, is that, so you recorded, I guess there are some guided meditation in which it's sort of a spoken guide throughout the piece, but instead of doing that, we decided to have you sort of set our mind and body ready for the experience before the piece. And but you recorded this, I think. Well, you recorded your narration, which is brilliant. I found myself being in a better, find myself in a better place just listening to your introduction a few times, especially to do with the breathing, getting your breath, which again for musicians is such a big part of what we do for a living, but you don't always think of it in terms of our own well-being, related how breathing is so important for that. But you also sent me a sound of nature or birds. Is that from where you live? Is that what it was?
Absolutely. So I when I record, I had multiple recordings, and every time I was trying to record my voice in the setting of the birds, I heard car engines, or I heard kids, having, frolicking, pool and their backyards, which is great, but not good for a piece. So I then decided, well, let me just do a recording of the chirping of birds outside of our patio. And I was glad that you were able to superimpose that the piece, and I think that our listeners will enjoy it, because when I heard um, the version, it really fits perfectly with the narration or the guided meditation, excuse me. And so I love where we live. Our patio is it's a perfect setup for mindfulness in terms of I was just out there this morning meditating and reading scripture, and I just was able to be at peace. It was raining and the birds were chirping, and it was harmonious in a lot of ways, just to hear, different species of birds singing to one another. And, we talk about, at least it kind of made me think, especially given everything that's going on in our world right now, of that, what I heard this morning and what I hope people will hear with the soundtrack is the diversity that we can see even in God's beautiful creation of birds. And if we could appreciate the diversity of birds chirping, it would be great for us to appreciate the diversity, whether it be based on our skin color, our gender, our sex, or sexual orientation. So those were some things that I was reflecting on today. But those birds are they're real birds. Nothing
That's right.
I Googled. It's the birds outside of our patio.
Right, and it seems that, especially during the last these days, I think in this country, I feel like we often say music has the power to heal, and I think it's more true than ever, really, ever before. And I think part of the process too is that I think healing through and re-energizing and refocusing through mindfulness practices and meditations, through music. I think I've found it it's so important to do it on a regular basis.
Yes.
Now it's sort of kind of it's like doing a minor tune-up with a machine, or what have you, like each day a little bit. I think is a very helpful practice or habit, I think, to get into for all of us today. So we hope that a lot of listeners out there will take these regular releases and use that as a way to be one with ourselves, so to speak, and so that we can go out and do whatever, for me, being a shy person, these Zoom meetings are very stressful. For me personally, so it might be just a Zoom meetings, or whatever that might be on somebody's mind would be great. And just the last word, a little bit about the first piece that we chose for this, which is, as I mentioned, it's Nimrod, from a piece called Enigma Variations by Edward Elgar, probably best known for Pomp and Circumstance March that everybody uses for graduation ceremonies. But that particular piece, or that particular performance of the piece that you'll be hearing, was made this past October, and it was an unplanned piece. It was not originally on the program for that particular concert. What happened was we lost one of our beloved musicians, in the violin section, Tim Baker, and he was such a big-hearted, warm character, radiant, great musician, and we all loved him. And it was such a blow for us to lose one of our own like that, somebody so young, too, as we're about to embark on a new season. So we found out essentially like a day before or so. So the morning of the concert, during the dress rehearsal, we just passed that music out. It's a piece that's familiar to many of us, so if not all of the musicians in our orchestra. So we essentially read through it, and then we performed it as a part of our tribute and thanks to celebrating the life of Tim Baker at the performance. And that's the recording that we'll be using. And So for our musical family in our orchestra, listening to this particular piece, it'll bring to us probably different sets of emotions and different memories, different kind of listening experience as well as a meditating experience for us. But so that's sort of the backstory for that particular piece. But Frank, you have mentioned to me earlier that as you were listening to this particular piece, kind of, if you don't mind sharing with us, like where the piece took you or your mind to.
Yeah, so I've probably listened to the Nimrod now at least 10 times, and every time I listen to it, I reflect on that, and I still come back to a nature scene. And when I was reflecting on it today, it reminded me of Psalm 23, where it talks about the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want for anything. He allows me to, or leads me to grassy meadows or green pastures. And when I hear the Nimrod, I think about being in those pastures, those green pastures where I can bask in the sun, I can feel the grass, I can smell the fresh aromas, whatever those may be. I can be present for that moment. And, I hearken back to, again, everything that's going on in our world right now. We need we need to have that sense of hope. And when I listen to this piece and I think about Psalm 23, and lying down in those green pastures, I have hope. My body is restored. I'm mindful of how I'm feeling, and it gives me a sense of peace. And so, in different faith communities, we talk about the Sabbath, and we always think about a day of rest. Well, I think about mindfulness as moments of rest. That, to your point, we should all be having these moments of rest during our days. Work-life balance can be difficult. Again, we're constantly being inundated with emails and trying to do the best we can to not only meet our needs, but meet the needs for me, for example, as a physician, trying to meet the needs of my patients. But we all have to replenish our tank. And what better way to do that than to lie in a green pasture for 4 or 5 minutes and have those mindfulness moments that can be a part of our life each and every day. The last thing I'll say is, and I'm a former musician, but one of the things that we know as musicians is that practice makes perfect, right? How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Well, same thing with mindfulness. How are we able to be more mindful and to meditate and be more effective? But we have to practice. And so that's what I want to encourage all of our listeners today. I hope that they enjoy the piece. I hope that they enjoy the guided meditation. But most importantly, I hope that they walk away with a sense of hope and peace, and that they will practice this each and every day, so that they can have multiple Sabbaths, and again, just for that moment and feel at peace.
Yeah, thank you so much for your words and your partnership in this, and hope to see you in person soon. But
yes, absolutely, yeah. And thank you.
Thank you.